All right, good afternoon. My name is Dwayne Bragg. I'm the Vice President of GPO Operations at Yankee Alliance. I want to thank you all for attending this session today. Welcome to the 37th Annual Yankee Alliance Conference. We look forward to another great event, all because you guys decided to spend some time, take some of your valuable time to spend with us over the next few days. Thank you for investing your time in developing relationships with Yankee Alliance and our members. We thank you for giving us a few days so we can focus on aligning our members' goals with the goals of the suppliers. We hope you take advantage of this opportunity to network, learn, and have fun while making these next 2 days productive. Many of you have attended this conference in the past, and we really appreciate your support. If this is your first time attending Yankee Alliance Conference, we hope you have a great time, and we want to see you again next year. Our conference is designed to balance fun and work in a laid-back, comfortable environment. We want you to relax and engage in the numerous activities we have planned. And I encourage you to reach out to me or any of the Yankee staff if you have any questions at all. We want to make this the most productive and enjoyable time while you work to make connections throughout the week. This conference would not be possible if it wasn't for the support of our suppliers, our business partners. Please join me in thanking our suppliers, especially those who provided valuable sponsorships. Thank you very much. For our members, I want to make sure you please take the time to visit our business partners and thank them for their support. We encourage you to network throughout the conference and have a great week. So this conference allows us to bring suppliers, Premier, Yankee, our members, and all together to network, listen, and learn as we collaborate to develop strategies and solutions to address the many challenges that we face in the supply chain. This last year has been another year of challenges, everything from supply chain disruptions, which continue to impact the delivery of care, while tariffs added another level of uncertainty and frustration. These challenges force our members to use valuable time to address these issues. We need our business partners to understand and listen to our needs and help us develop solutions that save time and money. We need our business partners to align with our goals, which is a great way to segue into the start of this session. This session will provide insight into our members' goals, challenges, and current concerns, and you'll hear directly from our members from a very esteemed panel of senior leaders providing different perspectives from finance, supply chain, and from clinical. Now let's get started. I'm very pleased to introduce our esteemed panelists, and thank you all for participating. First, we have Stephen Forney, who serves as Chief Financial Officer for Covenant Health. In this capacity, he oversees strategic, fiduciary, and operational responsibilities, including accounting, treasury, planning, budgeting, and financial reporting. He also provides daily financial leadership and oversight to achieve financial performance. Stephen brings to this position over 30 years of experience in healthcare financial operations in acute, post-acute, physician practice, and pre-hospital settings, with a particular focus on operational improvement. Before coming to Covenant Health, he served in leadership capacities as CFO of the Chinese Hospital Association in San Francisco, as CFO for system operations for Prospect Medical Holdings in Los Angeles, CFO for Verity Health System in Redwood Shores, and is Vice President and CFO of Ardent Health Services, Lovelace Health System in Albuquerque. A native of New York, Stephen attended St. Leo College of St. Leo, Florida. As an undergraduate, where he later earned his MBA, graduating with distinction. He's a licensed certified public accountant, a certified global management accountant, a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives, a fellow in the Healthcare Financial Management Association, and is board certified by the Medical Group Management Association. He is also widely published and is a frequent presenter on financial topics for professional organizations across the country. Next, we have Michael Cordy, who is an accomplished healthcare supply chain executive with over 23 years of progressive leadership experience across hospital operations, consulting, and supply chain transformation. He currently serves as the Director of Supply Chain at Sturdy Health in Attleboro, Massachusetts, where he leads procurement, logistics, value analysis, and contracting strategies that strengthen operational efficiencies and support exceptional patient care. Throughout his career, Michael has delivered measurable results in both provider and consulting settings. As managing consultant at Guidehouse, he led multiple large-scale supply chain turnaround initiatives, generating more than $10 million in realized savings while designing sustainable processes for acute care facilities across the U.S. Prior to consulting, he held a series of leadership roles at Bay State Health, where he drove multi-million-dollar cost savings, standardized medical surgical supplies, and oversaw capital equipment acquisitions for major clinical projects, including wellness centers, MRI suites, and COVID-19 response initiatives. Michael is recognized for his expertise in contract negotiations, clinical supply utilization, GPO strategy, capital procurement, and purchase service optimization. He's also highly regarded as a member and collaborator, engaging cross-functional teams from the C-suite to frontline clinical leaders to implement cost-effective solutions without compromising care quality. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Healthcare Management Administration from Our Lady of the Elms College, graduated magna cum laude, and is certified in the business of healthcare by the Healthcare Financial Management Association. Finally, we have Jill Romero, MSOL, BSN, RNFA, CNOR, and Director of Surgical Services, Tufts Medicine, Lowell General Hospital. Jill is a graduate of the University of Southern Maine School of Nursing and Southern New Hampshire's University Business School. Her nursing career has been almost exclusively in the operating room. Jill started as a staff nurse in the OR, and over the course of her career worked at different capacities, including staff nurse circulator, charge RN, RNFA, and OR clinical manager. As a director of surgical services, Jill oversees several departments, including the OR, PACU, STC, IR, endoscopy, wound care, and sports medicine. She is a certified OR nurse and a member of AORN. So we definitely have some esteemed panelists up here. Thank you. So we'll just start the discussion with a few questions we received from before the conference from our suppliers. Each panelist will respond to the questions, and we'll give you all a chance to ask follow-up questions. All right, so let's get started. We'll start with Steve. What operational pain point are you currently facing that vendors might help you solve?
You know, I'd have to say that kind of a consistent pain point for the whole industry is how to better manage margin, understanding that there's not more money coming down the pike for us. You know, obviously we have the OBBBA that's going to be taking money out of our pocket. The managed care payers are doing their best to take money out of our pocket. So now the question is, what can we get, how can we partner with our vendors to drive our costs down to better match that sort of behavior that's external to our organizations? And finding innovative ways to do that is really the thing that we need to be focused on as an organization and as an industry. And again, we've had some incredible successes with finding vendors that have a very unique approach to getting things accomplished, and those partners and those partnerships have been key to our financial success at Covenant.
Thank you, Steve. Mike, same question.
So I think overall, from a supply chain kind of point of view, we're all challenged with bandwidth, right? So I guess I would kind of task vendors to, when they come to an organization like Sturdy, and I obviously think it's really dependent on your organization. Everybody operates a little differently. I think we all have a common goal, is patient care. But I think really the operational pain points we have at Sturdy is, and probably everywhere, are just bandwidth of our teams, right? We're all doing a lot more with less folks. So one thing I would challenge them or just ask them when they're coming to us is to come prepared, be responsive, really know our organization first before they walk in the door. It's not just going to be, we're not just looking for price at the pump and transactional types relationship. We're looking for deeper vendor partnerships, just outside of just, that price at the pump, understanding our clinical needs as well as our operational needs. And overall, just being responsive to us when I reach out and you want us to give you more business and, potentially convert to your product line. If we sit down and have a business review and I give you information to come back and complete and turn it around, I expect you to do that in a timely fashion. So I think just being expedient, understanding our organizational goals, and additionally from a vendor perspective, vendor compliance, right? We all have vendor management systems. We have value analysis programs, and I can't say every organization is the same, but we all kind of operate on similar principles. So, I know this sounds maybe rudimentary, but know how to behave when you walk into our organizations. Don't bypass supply chain or the right folks. Come see us, come meet with us. And actually it'll expedite your process in the long run. If you go around the process and try to circumvent it, it's gonna end up back in in the supply chain chair eventually. So I think if you come in, be transparent, understand us as a whole, and be responsive to what our asks are, I think those relationships will grow more quickly.
Right, thank you. And Jill, from a clinical perspective, what are some of the pain points you're seeing, and how can vendors help you?
Well, I would echo a lot of what I've just heard, but also I would say, frequently what's happening now with all of the financial challenges that the hospital is experiencing and the system is experiencing as a whole, I would ask that people provide, and I've asked vendors more recently to provide lots of options. Can we lease it? Can we purchase disposables and have something placed in our organization? Capital, what do you have for a finance plan? So having a lot of options then helps the finance team to figure out what's the best way to bring that product into the organization. That's one of the bigger things. And of course, responsiveness. Yes, there's vendors that are great. They're there up to the point of sale or, product acquisition and then beyond. And then there's others that it's very difficult to reach them and to have product support. We need product support not just for the OR teams or the other clinical teams that are using them, but also for the surgeons or clinicians.
Great, thank you, Jill. Next question, we'll start with Mike. And Mike, you talked a minute ago about having a relationship that's more than transactional, more of a strategic relationship. So in your opinion, what does a truly strategic vendor relationship look like to you?
Yeah, like I touched on it a little bit earlier, but not transactional, right? I mean, that could mean a lot of things, but I think somebody that is willing to go a little bit deeper, to all the points that we're trying to make here, be responsive, kind of work with us with our strategic plan, and I know that takes both parties, right, to be able to share that plan overall, but I think it's just beyond just how much money can I save you, right? There's also, there's initiatives that come forth where we're going to say, we're going to save you 10 minutes of OR time, 15 minutes of OR time if you use our product. That's great, but we need to be able to measure and monitor that. So we need vendor partners that will be able to supply us with that data, not just kind of say it once and then walk away from it. I mean, there's a lot of great vendors out there. I think I've had formed great partnerships in my short time at Sturdy and then in my career, and I think just, leveraging those partnerships, there's some larger strategic partners that have more business units, so sometimes it's easier to pull those levers and, work a little more easily with those, but there are also some smaller suppliers out there that do some unique things, right? So I think overall it's about being attentive to what we need, following up, just like anything, if you want to do well, you have to go above and beyond, right? Like we're there, we don't sell the product for our vendors, right? So we ask that growth happen organically, right? So use our value analysis programs, communicate with us, schedule business reviews. I think those are all important things, keeping those cadences and being connected. I think that's what we're looking for, really, in a vendor partner.
Great. And Jill, what does a strategic relationship look for you from a clinical perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of the same, just having that good collaboration, transparency, and communication, being responsive when things are needed on the organization level. The other thing I would say that we've run into more recently is just assistance with coding and billing for better reimbursement. Sometimes we have run into situations where if we had changed some of our documentation, CPT codes, that type of thing, to help us get the most reimbursement that we can out of a particular procedure to, maximize the products that we're using.
Great. And Stephen, I'm sure that from your finance perspective, the combination of these two responses are probably something important for you, right?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been really trying to do over the last several years towards getting that strategic partnership is embedding the supplier, embedding the vendor actually into our operations. We've been a very strong proponent of outsourcing. We've outsourced our entire IT department. Did that about 3 years ago. Actually, Norelm, one of the sponsors here, is one of the companies involved in doing that for us. That has been a remarkable success for us, and it really was embedding the vendor into what we do. The entire function is there. Their people sit with our senior leadership side by side in leadership meetings. And that has allowed us to truly be partners in the success of the organization. We've done that with Revenue Cycle as well. We've done that with a number of other smaller vendors where it's, here's a process. I want you to be the expert in the process. I want you to be the expert in your product. You come get here and be a partner with us and help us drive success on that, as opposed to having a transactional relationship.
Great. Thank you, Steve. The next question, we'll start with Jill. So when you look across your organization at the opportunities for savings, what do you think is the most meaningful untapped savings in the organization, and what would you need to help be able to capture those savings?
So one of the big things that we run into is just, especially in an OR setting, is waste. Waste of product, just not having preference cards as up to speed as they should be, having teams that don't work with the same surgeons all of the time. We do end up seeing, some amount of waste of product, expirations, that type of thing. So I think that really having a good lean process and really bringing everybody on board with that to be focused in that direction would be a huge opportunity for cost savings.
Thank you. Mike?
I think it's going to be different for everyone, depending on your organization. I think it's service line dependent for us. And for us, we tend to target non-contracted pricing and kind of go down that pathway. So, depending on, where your strengths are, I think specifically for Sturdy, we targeted the orthopedic space, right, as the largest opportunity for savings there, but it's probably going to be different for, depending on the organization. So I just think that's kind of our approach, is to look where, we're kind of off contract, and then it kind of guides our pathway. So looking at it that way. Then we do internal benchmarking, right? We have databases that help us, and then we target where the biggest opportunities are, right? We look at entire books of business, and if we're seeing that, we're not in the top quartile or median price points for what we're paying, then we're going to bring those folks in and target those areas. So I can't say one area specifically. I think it just really grows from just doing, deep dive analytics and looking at, where we're falling short.
Okay. And Steve, what do you think is the most meaningful untapped area of savings in your organization?
I think probably we would view that as clinical variation. We have, we've been doing a lot of the blocking and tackling, trying to, drive contract compliance, drive pricing down, the like, but, understanding, what is done differently across all of our providers, all of our service lines that shouldn't be done differently. There's no reason for it to be done differently, and how much is that driving underlying costs. Finding tools out there to help us uncover that, especially, rolling into, you think in terms of how AI could impact that. I've seen some demos recently, some AI-driven tools that can integrate with an EMR and question the doctor, when he punches in that order for the lab test. Do you really want to do that, doc? Because there's nothing in the chart that would indicate that made sense. And finding tools like that, maybe they're out there, maybe they're yet to be created, but I think those will help the industry as well, but it'll help the industry move towards finding and rooting out that clinical variation. And we know just from what we can assess without those tools that, we spend inordinate amounts of money that really don't need to be spent, chasing things around an organization that at the end of the day didn't bring any value to the patient or to the organization.
Great, thank you. So this is kind of the question about what keeps you up at night, really. So what are the one or two biggest industry risks beyond anyone's control that could impact your organization's supply chain, where you're not confident there are sufficient controls or risk mitigation strategies already in place? So Mike, we'll start with you.
It's a good question. I think really what I've kind of just noticed, just been doing this for a long time, is some of these categories are shrinking, right? There's not enough suppliers that supply specific contract or specific item categories, right? So it keeps shrinking, and I think even in some categories it's become monopolistic, right? So you end up relying on one or two vendors to supply you, and then when there's, and you said outside of disasters, but I don't, know how that's avoidable, right? Those are just, it's not when, it's if it's going to happen again. And I think, I think it's just the shrinking market space is really what keeps me up at night. Like if somebody stops making something and they're the only ones that make it, I mean, and there's not alternatives out there in that marketplace, I don't know how to fix that or solve for that. So.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. We've seen that in a couple of different categories. You're right. That's a real big challenge for us to figure out. Jill, for you, what keeps you up at night? What are some things that you think you don't have sufficient controls or risk mitigation strategies in place for?
Yeah, I mean, back orders and recalls are a big thing. Obviously, that's kind of out of our control. I do applaud the supply chain staff who's constantly trying to chase that other product when something becomes unavailable. It's really a lot of additional work on their end, but I guess that would be the main thing that's concerning for me. We do see a lot of it.
Okay. Stephen?
And I'm going to kind of circle back to the clinical variation piece of this again, because I feel like it dovetails well into the potential supply shortages and not having alternatives. One of the things that, here not too long ago when we had the whole Baxter solution issue and, we're faced with possible shortages on that, our focus was very much on the clinical side of that and how do we not waste it? How do we use it in a standard, how do we use the solution in a standard fashion across the organization? And how do we not put ourselves in a situation where, we could have to start rationing services? And I see a lot of opportunities for that within our organization. But it's complicated work, and it's definitely something that, keeps all of us at home in our organization up at night, because we know there's going to be other issues out there, but we don't know which one's going to be the next one to drop. And obviously you can't boil the ocean and work on everything at the same time. But, it is, a systematic attack inside the organization to find those potential weak areas and strengthen up the resiliency in the event that there is a supply shock to the system.
Thank you, Steve. So we'll start with Jill this time. So with increasing supply costs and decreasing reimbursements, what strategies is your organization pursuing in the area of operational efficiencies and product utilization optimization?
So a couple of things, and particularly in collaboration with our premier partners, in terms of looking at contracts and market share. How can we shift our costs to the most efficient possible, the most cost-effective possible, trying to stay within those contracts that are set up. And then working with our premier team, again, we had some consultants over the summer that kind of looked at our process, gave us some ideas for a better way of managing our supplies. That's something that has been very helpful as well. Our surgical value analysis team meets monthly, and it's become very robust discussion with a lot of information to really make a good decision about any new product requests from surgeons.
Okay. And Stephen, how about for you? What are you working on for strategies for operational efficiencies and product utilization optimization?
One of the things that we're constantly looking for is what's the next big thing? What's something big and audacious that we can do? I'd never want to minimize, the importance of being in the details and being contract compliant, things of that nature. But, where is the next home run for us? That can really change the underlying footprint of the organization. I mentioned earlier that we did that with IT, and that fundamentally changed our cost structure. And we've done it with revenue cycle, which fundamentally changed not only our cost structure, but the underlying revenue throughput for the organization. you know, where's our next opportunity for something like that that actually makes a structural change in the organization? And that's what we're spending a lot of time looking for now. And, you know, my perspective is that, you know, probably within the next year or two, we might see some applications like that with AI that will fundamentally change the underlying cost structure for healthcare facilities.
Great, thank you. The next question is about sustainability. That's the focus for several of our members, and also I know a lot of suppliers are also focused on sustainability. So when your organization is making a product conversion or acquisition decision, how often do you consider the greenhouse gas emissions generated by a supplier in the manufacturing process? And with that, we'll start with Mike on that one.
To be honest, I don't know. We're looking at that a lot. Sometimes we're just trying to source product, right?
Yep.
But I think overall we should do a better job of that, and probably need to do a better job of educating ourselves. And I'm guessing partnering with our GPOs to get, you know, additional details on these types of suppliers that are engaged in those types of activity would probably be the pathway we would want to go down. But if I'm being transparent, we haven't particularly, you know, looked down that pathway.
Okay.
You know, we try to use, you know, in that vein, though, we do try to look at reprocessing solutions, right, to lower our footprint there, right, and use reprocess items. But you're not looking at, you know, we're not doing a better job of researching our vendors and see where they're sourcing these items. So honestly, I don't have enough time in the day to do that, but I need to do a better job of that. So.
Well, thank you. I didn't even pay for that, but you set me up to talk about our sustainability committee that we have at Yankee Alliance. So any members that want to join that, I'll be happy to have you join that group. Stephen, how about yourself? What's Covenant doing in the area of sustainability, or what are you looking at, or do you even consider greenhouse gas emissions when you're looking at manufacturers?
Well, we actually do look at sustainability as a Catholic Health ministry. That's something that is on the radar screen for Catholic Health in the United States. We have gone through exercises in you know, getting information in a broad sense on, you know, the environmental footprint of our various vendors. But at the end of the day, I can tell you right now, we're not going to pay more for a product because somebody has a nice slide deck on environmental sustainability, because we have to be able to keep the lights on, keep the doors open, take care of patients first.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's obviously a message to suppliers. You know, obviously there's going to be some teeth in that sustainability program that makes it worthwhile, as opposed to just like Stephen was talking about, a slideshow presentation with no support behind it. So definitely looking for suppliers that can help us look for areas that help us be more environmentally conscious, but also fiscally responsible. Jill, how about yourself?
Same, we're really not looking at that at this point in time. It's not something that comes up in any of our, you know, product analysis. Obviously, it probably is a good idea. We do try to do reprocessed items as well, as much as we're able to with surgeon compliance with that. We did try doing a recycling program at the hospital several years ago, but it was not cost effective. It was more costly than, you know, just throwing things away, and it just wasn't sustainable from a finance perspective. So wish we could bring that back, but that's not something we're currently doing.
So following up on that question, so how can suppliers that offer reusable products position those products or promote those products to the end users as an alternative to your disposable options? We'll start with Stephen on that one.
You know, that's actually something that I personally have been working on and involved with vendors for, I'll go ahead and date myself here, for probably close to 30 years, because I was trying to figure out how to partner with vendors to create a reusable product rather than all of the various different disposables. And, you know, I think that you go back to that partnership piece of that. How do you integrate into the organization, and how do you create product that fits the need for the organization? You know, trying to, you know, coming up with, you know, tools, surgical instruments that aren't disposable, that can easily be, maintained, that are durable, as an example. And, it seems like we've, as an industry, kind of ran away from that, and, I think there's opportunities to go back to that sort of thing as an example.
Thank you. And Jill, how about yourself? So how can a supplier promote or position a reusable product as an alternative to a disposable product?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to look at anything as long as it provides the functionality that we need and meets cost effectiveness. We're happy to look at those products as well.
And Mike, same question?
Yeah, I mean, I think just, during business reviews and different opportunities, we definitely want to leverage our VA program for that, because these things need to be socialized in the right environment, right? We don't want to do these things, without bringing all the stakeholders in to ensure, they understand the downstream impact, not just financially, but on the footprint end of things. And I think, the larger concerns that always pop up is, I don't want to use this device because, depending on what type of case it was used, and they don't think it's, it's been reprocessed appropriately. I mean, those are a lot of, fallacies around that, but I think, from a vendor perspective, bringing that education to us, and we can help socialize that and help them if they bring it in a format that's digestible and that tells a story, we can certainly help, socialize those conversations to our providers. Because we've actually done quite a few recently, and we've gotten good physician buy-in, and we've been able to save a lot of money. So,
Great, thank you. So we've covered quite a few topics already, but I want to open it up to other questions from the audience. I received quite a few questions from the suppliers, and I thank you all for your support, but this is your chance to ask any questions you'd like to address, have this panel address. So with that, we'll open up. Anybody have any questions you'd like to ask this group, or any follow-up questions to some of their responses? No questions? Go ahead. Yeah.
You talked about how there's the risk of disruption and the cost of disruption in your supply chain. So what I wanted to ask is, what measures are you guys doing to partner with vendors or identify vendors or opportunities to build in more resiliency into your supply chain? And where do you rank that on your priority list currently?
Did y'all hear it? Yeah. Okay, all right. You want to start, Mike?
I mean, I think we obviously leverage our GPO partners, right, because they have more touch points with vendors, right? You guys are kind of funneling through them. But I think resiliency is huge. We've all kind of gone through it, COVID, right? And even prior to that, there was a hurricane in Puerto Rico. So I think supply chain's always been resilient. It just wasn't talked about for a long time. So I think it's always top of mind for anybody that works in supply chain overall. I think it just got highlighted over the last several years based on, these larger medical events that have happened and impacted all of us. But I think, leveraging, you're here at the Yankee Conference, so this is a great forum for you to get in contact with us, to kind of talk to us about what you can bring from a resiliency perspective. So I think, this is a great forum, and, I think, that's the way I would do it, through our GPO. And, if you get my information, we can certainly discuss, what resiliency looks like for both parties.
And Joe, from a clinical perspective, how do you prioritize resiliency in the supply chain?
So honestly, there's a heavy reliance on our local supply chain team, who is really getting the, first information about any of those kinds of back orders, that type of thing. They do a phenomenal job to keep us, running even with those kinds of things that have happened. We have had to make some clinical decisions based on various situations, like you talked about the Baxter shortage. We had to make some different clinical decisions just to keep things going and make sure that all of our patients received care. But so that's basically a lot of heavy reliance on the supply chain team as that first line of, looking at those things.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, from Covenant's perspective?
I concur with the idea that the supply chain really is the, sort of like the starting point for gauging resiliency and staying on top of it. Working with our GPO partners, is to me sort of an extension of working with supply chain in the respect that they are, especially as we came out of COVID and saw product shortages, the GPOs are placing a higher priority in contracting on, not just the best price, but hey, what happens if something happens? What's your contingency plans? And that greater emphasis on resiliency throughout the system, I think will, is how we're looking at it, how we consistently engage both internally and externally about it.
Right, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Go ahead, right here.
That same lane of resiliency, particularly in the beginning, well, maybe more in the June, May timeframe, there was a lot of emotion in the market around tariffs and stuff like that. Is the factor of U.S. versus internationally made at all a decision factor in your mind? I'm just curious if that's, a lot of times I think it's still, maybe it's on your mind, but it still comes down to cost as being the big factor. Where something's manufactured come in your decision process?
Mike?
I'd love to have things, stateside here for sure. But I think when it comes to being able to just put product on your shelves, right? You need to take care of patients. So I think that always is going to be paramount. Obviously, like I said, would love to have things manufactured here, to source it from here, because there's a little more predictability around that. So that does factor in the predictability. It's really about getting products here. So I think it would just have to, I think it'd be more product line specific, right? Like there's always those high areas where we're always constantly running into shortages. So I think, taking a look at those areas, and if there was, wherever we can really source them from and build a deeper supply chain partnership, I don't think I'm opposed to whether it's overseas or here. It's kind of, we need to have product on the shelf to take care of our patients. That's always number one. And because there is a cost to this as well, not just dollars and cents, there's the labor costs to all these things, right? So if you're in turn paying people overtime or to stay later because they're dealing with these things, because it is a back order, if you can procure something more regionally or closer to you that makes your supply chain run more efficient, there's less back orders, yeah, I think we can figure out what that total cost of ownership is. So I think it's kind of really open to it, but I have no preference.
So that was obviously a sourcing question, but Jill or Steve, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that winds up being it's almost like on a case-by-case basis. The fact that we do have significant tariffs on various products in various countries out there actually could change that cost analysis on a given product significantly to where domestic, production might make more sense now. And we might see more of that domestic production come online, and then even lower cost more in that respect. So, like I said, I'm still looking for lowest cost, but I think that changes where the lowest cost might be in some respects.
Are you seeing the effects hit your organization of tariffs, or are you seeing much of that at this point, or is it still hard to calculate at this point? Steve?
I think it's hard to tell really cleanly at this point. I mean, we do have all of our GPO modeling, things of that nature that give us directional. We do see some pricing, as contract cycle, we see pricing pressure coming up. But there's, especially in some of the more complicated products, there's so many components of the product might be from so many different countries that understanding how the tariffs are really impacting that is complicated.
Mike, anything to add to that?
I think, no, we continually track these costs. I mean, it's vendor dependent a lot of times. So you guys share a lot of data with us. Our med-surg distributors share data with us. So I have to calculate it and send it to the CFO. So yeah, we are monitoring it pretty closely.
Yeah. I will put in a plug in for Premier Yankee that we're doing our best to try to make sure we don't accept any tariff price increases. I know there are definitely some challenges out there, but we're trying to hold the line as best we possibly can on that. So hopefully suppliers can work with us on that and help us to minimize those impacts and prevent those impacts. Any other questions from the audience? Go ahead.
So you've talked about the need for cost savings, right? And obviously supply chain issues, scarcity, backorders has been a concern as well. Do you see your organizations moving more towards high compliant sole source agreements for the cost savings, or mitigating your risk and taking on more dual or multi-source agreements with lower compliance?
I think it's product line dependent, really, in a lot of sense, right? Like I said, we want to drive the most value through cost savings is a big way to do that, but we also need to have supply. So I think it really just is going to be product line, service line dependent, right?
Yeah, we're actually leaning more towards, the high compliance model and leaning on the GPOs to, drive vendor resiliency as opposed to just simply having multiple products. And that goes back to that whole clinical variation piece again too, because if you've got 3 different contracts for a product, you're obviously not having consistency around the use of that product. So to us, that kind of dovetails nicely with the clinical variation reduction.
Thank you. Do you have anything you want to add to that? No?
Yeah, excuse me. I would say that, just looking at our contracts, we have, looked at some high dollar things like orthopedics, mesh, things like that we're trying to be a little bit more compliant with less vendors. Sometimes we have quite a few in different spaces, but that's really the primary thing that we're looking at right now.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, we have the one here that one of the suppliers submitted earlier. So if there's one thing I could get from my top supplier that I don't get today, it would be fill in the blank. Jill, do you have anything you'd like to talk about? Anything you'd like to get from a supplier that they're not currently giving you?
I guess responsiveness and communication, that's a couple of things that or sometimes can be lacking, not with everybody, but sometimes.
Okay. And Mike?
The top supplier?
The top supplier.
If it's my top supplier, pretty confident we get what we want.
Okay.
But
Or they won't be your top supplier, right?
they wouldn't be the top supplier anymore.
Is there something you'd like to get from a supplier that you're not getting, one of your other suppliers?
I think, it's supply chains, it's a tricky kind of environment, right? With tariffs, there's always a new challenge each day. So I think everybody, all the vendors I've ever worked with over the course of my career do a really good job. Like, I think they try to do their best, but sometimes they're just the messenger in a lot of this, right? Yeah. So I try not to really take it out, on them. I think, as long as we're communicating consistently and they're just being transparent with us and I'm being transparent with them, I don't think there's anything we can't solve. So, maybe to answer your question, just, transparency, I think.
Yeah. And Jill said the same thing, communication. I think that's the biggest thing that we hear when we talk to our members about, just let us know what's going on. If you know something's happening, please share that with us as much information you can, as early as you can, so we can help prepare for it. That's the big thing that would help us all. I don't know, Steve, if you have anything you want to add to what you'd like to get from a supplier that you're not currently getting?
Can always find me more savings.
Speaking like a true CFO. So, Steve, this is a question, I don't mean to catch you off guard. I don't think I shared this with you, though, but there's a question that came in late, and I think it's a good one, especially from a financial perspective. So, the one big, beautiful bill, what steps are you taking to prepare for that? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of expected cuts. How does the health system prepare for the one big, beautiful bill?
See, this is going to be, obviously very multifaceted. There's a revenue cycle aspect to this where you're really going to have to work on eligibility processes, eligibility helping people meet eligibility requirements that, even if you get reductions, that helps to mitigate the reductions. You're going to have individuals that may be losing a subsidy on the ACA, So what's the option there? How do you get them into some kind of a coverage arrangement? So that's one side of this. The other side is, some of what we've been discussing about is how do you dramatically restructure the cost framework of an organization? And I think that's going to be, a very necessary thing, and people are going to have to, systems are going to have to start looking at different aspects of their cost structures that they haven't had to in the past. Or maybe they should have, but the pressure hasn't been there. And I think that there's going to be a lot of soul searching around what programs do we really need to offer in a given community. There's going to be discussions around how do we go about offering those programs. There will be a lot of streamlining in the organizations that are going to be successful for this. And that, I don't mean that to be necessarily, cut, but it's going to be an aspect around how do you truly drive efficiency within the organization? Because, grand scheme of things, healthcare is not the provision of healthcare is not what anybody would consider to be efficient. It's from an other industry perspective. So there are a lot of inefficiencies that can be taken out of that, and this will, I think, be an impetus for organizations to try to find those efficiencies.
Thank you. So, Mike, you talked a minute ago about your top supplier, and if they didn't give you what you're expecting to get, they won't be your top supplier. So, how do you differentiate between a high-performing vendor and from an average one? What thing stands out for you between that top supplier and others that are maybe more average?
Just overall, just the relationship, right? I think sometimes it depends on just the amount of volume that you do. They become your top supplier. I think, but it doesn't have to be a large spend vendor. I really think we've kind of touched upon it all along, is just that relationship, the transparency, responsiveness, right? Really educating yourself on the organizations that you're walking into, understand their policies, be compliant with their vendor programs, right? Just follow the proper process, go through the right channels. I think for me, that's how you become a vendor partner in the long run, because, if you're doing all those things, we're going to want to do more business with you, or at least we're going to lean on you more, right? And say, hey, you've been great. Can you help me with this, right? So I think it just becomes organic at that point, but I think there's those core steps that if everybody does, there's no guarantees, right? But I think if, following those kind of core things I just laid out will go a long way.
Okay. And Jill, from a surgical services perspective, how do you differentiate between a top-performing vendor and someone that's more average?
Yeah, a lot of the same, really, just that collaboration, the reliability, being there to support the organization as needed. Those are really huge. Good communication. We rely on that, on some of our vendors really come through with that kind of thing. So we want more to be like that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, before I ask this panel the last question from my list, are there any other questions from the audience? Go ahead, in the back. Nuncio? So clinical reference, Jill, that'd be a question up your alley. How do you manage that, those outliers?
Yeah, we've definitely run into some of those challenges. We've had some, newer providers that have come on board, and they want to use something that they've used at their previous facility, and it does create a lot of work and challenge, both from the clinical and the supply chain standpoint. We do look at those requests, any requests for something to be brought in for a particular case or for just a particular surgeon to use in general, do a cost analysis of that just to see if we can potentially bring that in, also looking at our inventory, right? So we don't want to have a huge amount of inventory on the shelves. So every case is kind of different. We do it on a case-by-case basis, but it truly is a challenge. And sometimes we just have to say no to that provider and provide some justification for that.
So Mike, the supply chain and physician relationship is critical. How do you address that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts, I mean, depending on the scenario, right? If we're talking about a new provider coming on, right? Try to lean more on the vendor onboarding process to get with supply chain a bit earlier than before they bring this new provider on, and we can share kind of, hey, here's this service line, here's what we have on our shelves, right? Can you work within this? And, I think, that's the way I would eventually like to get to, is kind of having those conversations up front. And I think it makes it easier because if you're educating this provider saying, yeah, here's what we do for total joint replacement, right? Can you work within the kind of the vendor selection that we have here? Not say that it's going to guarantee anything, but I think it helps, and then maybe there's less requests outside of our compliance in that scenario. But oftentimes, if I'm being just completely honest, like they kind of, depending if you're trying to grow a service line, right, and they want to bring this provider in, they typically get what they want. I mean, so.
Yeah. So Steve, obviously Nunzio talked about the impact financially. So how, from a CFO perspective, how do you handle that non-compliance or outlier providers that are spending more than, that are costing you a lot of money?
If we actually determine that, we actually get medical staff leadership involved, and we'll sit down and present the information to them and the data, and and I've heard all the excuses like, well, this product is better. And it's like there's no study that says that. I'm sorry, doc. And work through that with our clinical leadership to hopefully help convince them that it's the right thing to do, to move to a different product, and then provide them with the support necessary to move to that product. Not always successful, but that's the approach we take.
Thank you. All right, the final question for this group is basically you want to say what parting message do you want to leave with the supplier community? What do you want to say to the business partners here in attendance? We'll start with Mike.
That's a tough question. No, I mean, I think I've had great relationship with a lot of vendor suppliers, and I think it becomes contentious is when, we're feeling the heat on our end, right? Stuff rolls downhill, and I'm generally at the bottom. So, so like I think it's all the things we've talked about today, right? Just give us a heads up if you know something's coming down the pipeline. I know you're trying to maybe hedge a million emails and things along those lines, but if you work with us or straightforward with us, we can work together. I can't guarantee like every vendor I meet you're going to get business, right? Because that becomes cost prohibitive, right? If I have a quarter market share in a specific service line, I'm probably not going to get the best price. I'd love to, but so I just think continue to work with us, follow our policies, procedures, learn about our organization, go through the value analysis process, just follow the proper channels, and I think it'll all relationships will be better, and we'll continue to keep partnering.
And Jill, any parting words for the business partners, suppliers?
Yeah, I would, echo what Mike said, but also just to say, like, really, with the complexity of healthcare nowadays, and costs and everything all together, we really just need that good collaboration between our supply chain team and our vendors and the clinicians to really make sure that we have exactly what we need to take care of our patients in the best way possible.
Great. Stephen?
Keep bringing us innovative solutions. I always have time for somebody that has knows how to make a better widget. And, even as much as I find, all of those very spammy emails from everybody to clutter up my inbox, I will be perfectly honest that I have actually run across a number of them that catch my eye, and it's kind of like, I hadn't think about doing that, but it has to be something innovative. It can't just be, hey, I'm I'm here to help your efficiency. Hey, I'm here to help your billing practices. It actually has to be something different. And when those have caught my eye, I've been the first person to send the email back, and we've gone on to use a lot of those in a lot of those companies. So be innovative, bring innovative solutions.
Great, thank you. So again, we covered a lot of topics, a lot of great feedback from our esteemed panelists. I want to thank you all for volunteering. Please join me in.